All right, in this section, still working with lines and still pertaining to their slopes, we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. Of course, if you remember, parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. They're always exactly the same distance apart. And because of that, they would have to have the same slope. So you need to remember parallel lines always have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, if you remember, perpendicular lines do intersect each other, but when they intersect, they have to intersect at right angles. So when you're talking about the slopes of perpendicular lines, they're going to be what's referred to as a negative reciprocal. So basically, of course, you understand same slope. That means exactly the same thing, obviously, but this would be an example of a negative reciprocal. So like if I told you that you had a slope of negative 3/2, the line that would be perpendicular to that would have to be a positive 2/3. So negative reciprocal, negative just simply means you got to change the sign. So if it starts out negative, you change it to positive. If it starts out positive, then you change it to negative. And of course, reciprocal means that you need to flip it. So like I could have started you out with this and said, well, what's the slope of the line that's perpendicular? And you would have given me this. So that's what it means by a negative reciprocal. Okay, so we're next going to talk about the general form of a line. And a general form of a line, of course, is different from the slope-intercept form. In this case, you want all of your terms on one side, your x term, your y term, your constant, and then have it set equal to 0. Now, when they write things in general form, it's always written so that this term is positive, so your a is always a positive number, but then you do not want any of these numbers, the a, b, or the c, being fractions. So as we look at these examples, you'll also be seeing the general form. All right, use the given conditions to write an equation in point-slope form and slope-intercept form. Okay, so just like a while ago, we're actually going to start out with this and then just end up making our line look like this. Okay, now since you're told that these lines are parallel, so your line passes through this point and it is parallel to this line. So let's just talk about this line for just a second. The slope of this line would be -5. Now, because you're told that your lines are parallel to each other, then your slope is going to stay exactly the same. So that means you're going to use this point and still use -5. You got to keep the slope the same. All right, so go into your point-slope form, same thing that we had used in the previous section. Okay, substituting in your information. Okay, so the y coordinate's -7, so minus a negative, I'm going to change that to a plus. My slope is -5, and then x minus the x coordinate. Now again, since this is negative, I'm going to change that to a plus. Okay, then I need to put it in slope-intercept form, so I need to distribute my -5. And then subtract my 7. So that's the equation of my line. So this line and this line would be parallel to each other. You could graph both of those in your calculator just to verify. Of course, you'd have to change your window a little bit to be able to see this one. So make sure you would adjust your window if needed, but they would appear to be parallel to each other. Okay, so a couple things different on this one. You're still going to start out by plugging your information into your point-slope form, but you notice this time it wants you to write your answer in general form instead of the slope-intercept form. And of course, this time we're also dealing with the fact that our lines are perpendicular to each other. Okay, what I've got to do is actually solve this for y, because I need to know the slope of this line. So first of all, I would need to subtract the x and add the 12. And then I need to divide everything by 7. Okay, so the slope of this line is negative 1/7. But since I'm finding lines that are perpendicular to each other, then along with using this point, the slope that I need to use would be the negative reciprocal of this. So you got to take the negative 1/7, flip it, and change the sign. So of course you're changing it to positive, but flipping it would just give you a whole number of 7. Okay, so now substitute your information into your point slope form. So I would have y minus negative 9 is equal to 7 times x minus 5. Now, you're still going to want, even though we've got to go with general form this time, you're still going to want to distribute and get rid of the parentheses. Okay, but now your next step's what's going to be different. In order to have the general form, you want everything on one side. But if you remember the number that's in front of the x, they're going to want you to write it so it's positive. So since this is already a positive, I'm going to take these two terms and shift them this way. So I'd have 7x, but now I've got to move over the y, so that means I've got to subtract it. I also have to subtract the 9, and I'll need to go ahead, or I can go ahead and combine it in here. So that's going to end up giving me a negative 44. So this would be the equation of your line in general form that's perpendicular to this one.